Why did he look so calm when I threatened to leave? How could a single offhand comment meant to draw him back become the moment he let me go? No questions asked. This isn't how it was supposed to end. Me, standing on the threshold, realizing my own power play was actually my exit. The click of my heels on our marble foyer echoed like gunshots in the silence. Adrien stood there, still as stone, watching me stumble through the front door at 2:30 in the morning. His dark eyes held no warmth, no concern, just that infuriating calm that made my skin crawl. "Did you have fun?" His voice was flat, emotionless. I kicked off my stilettos, letting them clatter against the wall. "It was just dancing, Adrien. God, you act like I committed murder." The club had been electric tonight. Jesse's hands on my waist as we moved to the music, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered compliments that made me feel alive again. For those few hours, I wasn't just Lysandra, the wife, the mother, the HR coordinator, drowning in mundane responsibilities. I was desirable, wanted, free. "Dancing." Adrien repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "Is that what we're calling it?" Heat flashed through me. "What's that supposed to mean?" He pulled out his phone, thumb swiping across the screen before turning it toward me. There I was, captured in vivid detail on someone's Instagram story. Jesse's arms wrapped around me from behind, my head thrown back in laughter, his lips dangerously close to my neck. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. My stomach dropped, but I forced my expression to remain defiant. "So what? We're friends. We were having fun. Since when is that a crime?" "Friends?" Adrien's laugh was hollow. "Right, the same friend who's been texting you at all hours. The same friend whose girlfriend looked ready to murder you tonight. Tasha." I'd seen her stormy expression from across the club, her phone raised as she recorded our dance. Vindictive bitch. She was just jealous that Jesse chose to spend his evening with someone who actually knew how to have fun. Tasha's paranoid. That's her problem, not mine. I crossed my arms, pushing my chest forward slightly, a move that usually softened Adrien's resolve. Tonight, his gaze didn't even flicker downward. "And what about our daughter? What happens when Issa's friends' parents see this? When her teacher asks questions?" "You're being dramatic." The words came out sharper than I intended. "It's not like I was doing anything wrong. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to me as you do to your computer screens, I wouldn't need to find company elsewhere." Something shifted in Adrien's expression. The hurt I'd grown accustomed to seeing was replaced by something harder, more resolved. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. From upstairs came the soft sound of footsteps. Issa appeared at the top of the staircase in her purple pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, why are you yelling?" My heart clenched. "I'm not yelling, sweetheart. Go back to bed." "But you sound mad." Adrien moved to the bottom of the stairs, his voice gentle. "Everything's fine, princess. Mommy and Daddy are just talking. Go back to sleep." Issa hesitated, her dark eyes, so much like her father's, moving between us with 7-year-old intuition that picked up far more than we wanted her to. Finally, she padded back to her room, leaving us in tense silence. I waited until I heard her door close before turning back to Adrien. "See? You're upsetting her with your jealousy." "My jealousy." He shook his head slowly. "Lysandra, do you even hear yourself anymore? Do you have any idea what you've become?" The question hit like a slap. "What I've become? I'm the same person I've always been. I'm just tired of being taken for granted, tired of being invisible in my own marriage." "Invisible?" Adrien ran a hand through his dark hair. "When was the last time you asked me about my day, my work, my feelings about anything? When was the last time you showed interest in anything that wasn't about you?" I felt my phone buzz against my clutch. Probably Sabine, my sister, wanting details about the night. She understood me, unlike the man standing before me with his accusations and cold judgment. "I show interest," I protested, "but you're always buried in your laptop or your phone. You come home, eat dinner in silence, help Issa with homework, and disappear into your office. What am I supposed to do? Sit around waiting for scraps of your attention? So you decided to get attention from Jesse instead. He makes me feel appreciated. He listens when I talk. He makes me laugh. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. When's the last time you made me laugh, Adrien? When's the last time you looked at me like I mattered? Adrien stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something die in his eyes. You're right, you deserve better than this. For a second, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe I'd finally gotten through to him. Maybe he'd realize what he was about to lose and fight for our marriage. Maybe I should leave, I said, testing the waters. It was a move I'd used before, the threat of departure that would make him panic, make him chase me, remind him of what life would be like without me. But instead of the desperate plea I expected, instead of the promises to change and do better, Adrien simply walked to the front door. He turned the deadbolt with a soft click, then pulled the door open wide. Cool night air rushed into the foyer, carrying the scent of rain and something that felt like finality. There you go, he said quietly, stepping aside with a small gesture toward the open doorway. Don't let me stop you. I stared at him, my mouth falling open. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to beg me to stay, to promise he'd change, to fight for us. Instead, he stood there with that infuriating calm, holding the door open like a doorman, waiting for me to exit his life. You can't be serious. You said maybe you should leave. I'm just making it easier for you. His voice was steady, almost gentle. Your sister lives 20 minutes away. I'm sure she'd be happy to hear all about how terrible I am. The power dynamic I'd been so sure of crumbled beneath my feet. This wasn't the desperate, wounded husband I'd grown accustomed to manipulating. This was a stranger wearing Adrien's face, a man who'd apparently reached some invisible breaking point while I wasn't paying attention. Adrien, I started, but he held up a hand. It's late, Lysandra. Issa has school tomorrow. Either come inside and we'll talk about this like adults, or go. But stop playing games. The word games hit me like ice water. Is that what he thought this was? A game? I was fighting for my marriage, for my right to feel alive and wanted. I was trying to save us, and he was treating it like some childish manipulation. But as I stood there in the doorway, feeling the night air raise goosebumps on my exposed arms, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The man who used to chase me, who used to beg for my forgiveness after our fights, who used to promise to be better, that man was gone. In his place stood someone who'd apparently learned to call my bluffs. Sunday brunch at Meridian Cafe was supposed to be damage control. I'd chosen the location carefully, upscale enough to project success, public enough to keep voices civilized, familiar enough that I knew the staff. What I hadn't anticipated was walking into what felt like a tribunal. Sabine arrived first, sliding into the booth across from me with her perfectly styled blonde hair and sympathetic expression. At 29, my younger sister had always been my most reliable ally, the one person who understood that I deserved better than the hand life had dealt me. You look tired, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. How did things go after I texted you last night? Adrien's being impossible. I kept my voice low, glancing around at the other diners. He's acting like I committed some unforgivable sin. It was just dancing, Sab. Just innocent fun. Men are so insecure, Sabine agreed, her voice carrying just a little too loudly. They can't handle when their wives have friends or interests outside the marriage. It's possessive and controlling. I felt some of the tension in my shoulders ease. This was exactly what I needed. Validation, understanding, someone who could see past Adrien's victim act to the real issue here. Exactly, and now he's giving me the silent treatment like some petulant child. I swear, sometimes I feel more like his mother than his wife. Miriam arrived next, Adrien's mother moving through the restaurant with her usual regal bearing. At 62, she still commanded attention. silver hair perfectly coiffed, designer handbag clutched in manicured fingers, expression coolly polite as she slid into the booth beside Sabine. Lysandra. Her greeting was cordial but chilly. Sabine. Miriam, thank you for coming. I know this is awkward, but I really think we need to clear the air about last night. There are some misunderstandings floating around, and I'd hate for them to damage family relationships. Miriam's pale eyes studied me with uncomfortable intensity. Misunderstandings, is that what we're calling them? Before I could respond, my mother appeared at the table. Judith Vey had always been the more diplomatic of our parents, but even she looked strained as she settled beside me. Girls, Miriam. Mum's voice carried that particular tone she'd used when Sabine and I were children, and had been caught in some mischief. I think we all know why we're here. The server approached, a young woman with bright pink hair and multiple piercings, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Can I start you ladies off with some drinks? Mimosas all around, I said quickly, needing alcohol to navigate this conversation. And could we get some of the spinach and goat cheese flatbread to start? As the server walked away, an uncomfortable silence settled over the table. I could feel the weight of 3 sets of eyes on me, each carrying a different flavor of judgment. So, I began, forcing a bright smile. I'm sure you've all heard some version of what happened last night. I just want to make sure everyone has the facts. The facts? Miriam's voice was dry as desert sand. Would those be the facts currently circulating on Instagram? Or perhaps the ones being discussed in the school pickup line? My stomach clenched. What do you mean? I mean, dear, that in the age of social media, nothing stays private for long, especially when it's documented so thoroughly. Sabine leaned forward, her loyalty kicking in. Look, maybe Lysandra had a little too much fun last night, but she's a grown woman. She's allowed to dance with friends. The real problem here is that Adrien is being controlling and jealous instead of addressing the issues in their marriage. Issues in their marriage? Mom's eyebrows rose. What issues exactly? I felt a flush of gratitude towards Sabine for giving me the perfect opening. Mom, Adrien has been emotionally distant for months. He works constantly, barely acknowledges me when he comes home, acts like I'm just part of the furniture. I've been feeling invisible in my own marriage. So you decided to make yourself very visible with another man, Miriam said quietly. Jessie is a friend. A good friend who actually listens when I talk, who makes me feel appreciated and valued. If that threatens Adrien, maybe he should look at why his wife needs to find emotional support elsewhere. The mimosas arrived, and I took a large gulp, hoping the alcohol would steady my nerves. Around us, the restaurant hummed with typical Sunday brunch energy. Families with children, couples sharing newspapers, groups of friends laughing over Eggs Benedict. Normal people living normal lives, not sitting in judgment of a woman who'd simply tried to reclaim a piece of herself. Emotional support, Miriam repeated. Is that what they're calling it now? Miriam, my mother said softly, perhaps we should let Lysandra explain her perspective before we... Before we what, Judith? Before we acknowledge that your daughter was photographed in a compromising position with a man who isn't her husband? Before we discuss the impact this might have on my granddaughter? The mention of Issa made my chest tighten. Issa is fine. She doesn't understand adult complications, and there's no reason she needs to be involved in this. Children understand more than we give them credit for, Miriam said, and they certainly understand when their parents' behavior becomes the subject of neighborhood gossip. My phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down to see a text from an unknown number. Saw the video from last night. Interesting dance moves. Thought you should know it's making the rounds. Attached was a short video clip, grainy but unmistakably me and Jessie, his hands roaming lower than I remembered, my body pressed against his in a way that looked far more intimate than I'd intended. The timestamp showed it was taken near the end of the evening, when the drinks had been flowing and my inhibitions had been thoroughly lowered. Everything all right? Sabine asked, noticing my expression. I quickly turned the phone face down. Fine, just work stuff. But Miriam's sharp eyes had caught my reaction. More misunderstandings? The flatbread arrived, giving me a moment to compose myself. I forced another smile, determined to regain control of the narrative. Look, I understand that some people might have gotten the wrong impression last night, but the truth is, I'm a married woman who went out with friends and had some innocent fun. If people want to read more into it than that says more about them than it does about me. Innocent fun, my mother murmured. Lysandra, honey, I raised you to understand that perception matters, especially when you're married, especially when you have a child. What message does this send? It sends the message that I'm not going to disappear just because I have a ring on my finger. I'm still a person with needs and desires and the right to enjoy myself. Of course you are, Sabine jumped in, and honestly, I think it's healthy that Lysandra is maintaining friendships and not just sitting at home waiting for Adrien to pay attention to her. Maybe if more wives refused to accept being taken for granted, their husbands would step up. I could have kissed my sister. Finally, someone who understood the real issue here. The real issue, Miriam said, as if reading my thoughts, is that my son is devastated. He came home from work Friday excited to tell you about a promotion he'd received, only to find you getting ready to go out without him. Again. I blinked. Promotion? He didn't mention any promotion. Perhaps because you didn't give him the chance. According to Adrien, you were too busy complaining about your hair and demanding he watch Isa so you could go, have some fun for once. The memory came back in uncomfortable detail. Adrien standing in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes, mouth opening to say something, before I'd launched into my litany of complaints about my day, my appearance, my need to get out of the house. I'd been so focused on my own agenda that I hadn't really listened to whatever he'd been trying to tell me. If he had something important to share, he should have spoken up. Like you spoke up about feeling invisible? Or did you just expect him to read your mind? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around us, the restaurant continued its cheerful buzz, but our table felt isolated in tension. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a Facebook message from Tasha Lynn. We need to talk. Soon. The flatbread sat untouched between us, cooling in the awkward silence. I could feel the weight of 3 generations of judgment pressing down on me, and suddenly, the public venue that was supposed to protect me felt more like a stage where my humiliation was on display. I think, I said carefully, that there's been a lot of miscommunication all around. Maybe Adrien and I need to sit down and have an honest conversation about where our marriage is headed. Maybe you do, Miriam agreed, but I suspect you might not like what he has to say. There was something in her tone that made my blood run cold, a certainty, as if she knew something I didn't. What's that supposed to mean? It means, dear, that my son is not the same man he was a week ago. It means that some lines, once crossed, change everything. As if summoned by her words, my phone lit up with a notification. Another unknown number, another video clip, this one showing Jesse's hand sliding down to cup my ass as we danced, my head thrown back in laughter, completely oblivious to the cameras capturing every moment. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was evidence. Monday morning hit like a freight train. I'd barely settled at my desk in the HR department when my coworker Janet appeared with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that screamed, "We need to talk." "Rough weekend?" she asked, setting 1 cup beside my keyboard with deliberate care. "Not particularly. Why?" I kept my voice light, but my stomach was already churning. Janet glanced around the office, then leaned closer. "Honey, I don't know how to say this delicately, so I'm just going to be direct. There's a video circulating that, well, it's got people talking." My hand stilled on my keyboard. "What kind of video?" "The kind that shows you getting very friendly with someone who isn't your husband at the Velvet Lounge Saturday night." Janet's voice was gentle but firm. Lisa from accounting sent it to the group chat yesterday. It's explicit, Lysandra. The office suddenly felt too small, too bright, too full of ears that might be listening. I could feel heat creeping up my neck as I imagined my colleagues, people I managed, people who reported to me, people whose respect I needed to do my job, watching me grind against Jessie on a dance floor. It's not what it looks like, I said automatically. Honey, I've seen the video. It's exactly what it looks like. Janet sat on the edge of my desk, her expression sympathetic but concerned. Look, I'm not judging. We all go through rough patches in our marriages. But you need to know that people are talking, and not kindly. My phone buzzed with a text from Sabine. Call me, now. Excuse me, I told Janet, grabbing my phone and heading for the bathroom. Sabine picked up on the first ring. Lysandra, thank God. Have you seen Facebook this morning? No, why? What's happening? Someone posted that video in the local moms group, the one with all the school parents. It's got like 50 comments already, and they're not good. My legs went weak. I locked myself in a bathroom stall and pulled up Facebook with shaking fingers. There it was, posted by someone named Michelle Torres, with the caption, "Is this appropriate behavior for a married mother? Asking for a friend." The comments were brutal. Poor husband. I'd die of embarrassment. Isn't this the woman whose daughter is in Mrs. Peterson's class? Yikes. Some people have no shame. Feel sorry for that little girl. This is why I don't trust women who go out without their husbands. Trashy behavior. Hope it was worth destroying your family. Sabine, I whispered, this is bad. It gets worse. Mum called. Apparently Aunt Helen saw it and called the whole family. Everyone knows, Lise. I closed my eyes, leaning against the cold metal of the stall door. This was supposed to be containable. A little gossip, maybe some awkward conversations, but nothing that couldn't be managed with the right spin and enough time. I need to call Adrien, I said. Have you talked to him since yesterday? He left for work before I got up, took Isa to school without saying goodbye. The memory stung more than I wanted to admit. For 7 years, Adrien had kissed me goodbye every morning, even when we were fighting. The absence of that small ritual felt ominous. Maybe that's for the best. Give him time to cool down. But as I hung up and returned to my desk, I realized cooling down might not be the issue. My email inbox contained a message from our HR director, Patricia Wong, with the subject line, "Meeting request, urgent." Patricia's office was a shrine to corporate professionalism, diplomas and certifications covering one wall, motivational posters about teamwork and excellence covering another. She gestured for me to sit across from her desk, her expression carefully neutral. Lysandra, I'm going to be direct. We've received some concerns about a video that's been circulating online. A video that features you in what could be characterized as compromising circumstances. Patricia, that video was taken out of context. I was just dancing with a friend. Nothing inappropriate happened. The appropriateness isn't really the issue here. The issue is that you are a visible representative of this company, particularly in your role managing employee relations. When staff members are sharing videos of you in situations that could be seen as unprofessional, it creates problems. My mouth went dry. What kind of problems? The kind that make other employees question your judgment and authority. The kind that make clients wonder about our company culture. The kind that require immediate damage control. I see. I tried to keep my voice steady. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you take some personal time. Let this blow over. Come back when the gossip dies down and people have moved on to other topics. Personal time. Unpaid leave. Professional exile disguised as concern for my well-being. How long are we talking about? 2 weeks minimum. Possibly longer, depending on how this develops. I wanted to argue, to point out that my personal life shouldn't affect my professional standing, that I was being punished for something that happened outside of work hours. But the sympathy in Patricia's eyes told me this wasn't a negotiation. I understand. I said quietly. The drive home felt like a funeral procession. Every red light gave me time to imagine the conversations happening in offices, coffee shops, school pickup lines. Every glance from other drivers felt loaded with judgment. At home, I found Issa in the living room with Mrs. Chen, our elderly neighbor who sometimes helped with childcare. Issa looked up from her coloring book with a confused expression. "Mommy, why are you home? Are you sick?" "Just taking a little break from work, sweetheart. Where's Daddy?" Mrs. Chen's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the way her eyes avoided mine. "Mr. Price asked me to stay with Issa after school. He said he had some errands to run." Errands. On a Monday afternoon, Adrien, who never missed work, who planned his schedule weeks in advance, was running mysterious errands. After Mrs. Chen left, I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. No response. It wasn't until Issa was in bed that I heard his car in the driveway. He came through the front door carrying a manila envelope and wearing an expression I'd never seen before. Not angry, not hurt, but resolved, determined. "We need to talk," he said. "Yes, we do. Adrien, this whole situation is getting out of hand. People are spreading rumors, taking things out of context. I need you to help me control the narrative here." He set the envelope on the kitchen counter and turned to face me. "Control the narrative. Is that what you think this is about?" "Isn't it? Look, I know you're hurt and maybe I made some poor choices Saturday night, but this public humiliation isn't helping anyone, especially not Issa." "You're right about one thing. This is about Issa." He picked up the envelope. "I spent the afternoon with a lawyer, Lysandra, discussing custody arrangements and separation agreements." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Separation? Adrien, you can't be serious. Over one night of dancing." "One night." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lysandra, I found the text messages. All of them. The ones you thought you deleted. The ones you sent to Sabine. The ones Jessie sent to you. This wasn't one night. This has been going on for months. My phone." He'd gone through my phone while I was sleeping, violated my privacy, invaded my personal space, violated the trust between us. "You had no right." "I had every right. I'm your husband, or was anyway." He pulled papers from the envelope. "These are separation documents. You can review them with your own lawyer, but the terms are fair. Joint custody of Issa, division of assets, spousal support for 6 months, while you figure out your next steps." "Next steps?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Adrien, this is insane. You're destroying our family over some text messages and a stupid video." "I'm protecting our family. I'm protecting our daughter from growing up thinking this is what marriage looks like. I'm protecting myself from becoming the kind of man who accepts being treated like a fool." The kitchen felt like it was spinning. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be angry, hurt, willing to fight for us. He wasn't supposed to be calm and prepared and 3 steps ahead of me. "What about counseling? What about trying to work through this?" "What's to work through, Lysandra? The fact that you've been emotionally cheating for months. The fact that you're more concerned about controlling the narrative than taking responsibility. The fact that even now you're trying to make this my fault." I stared at the papers in his hands, legal documents that would end everything we'd built together, that would make me a divorced single mother, that would mark me as the woman who couldn't keep her husband. "People will talk," I said desperately. "People are already talking. The difference is, now they'll be talking about a man who respected himself enough to leave instead of a man who was too weak to stand up for himself." As he walked toward the stairs, I realized that my threat to leave, my power play, my attempt to make him chase me, had backfired spectacularly. I'd opened a door I couldn't close, started a conversation I couldn't control, and now I was facing the consequences of a game I'd never intended to play for keeps. The gym at 7 a.m. was supposed to be my sanctuary. I'd been going to Apex Fitness for 3 years, long enough to establish routines and relationships, long enough to feel like I belonged somewhere. But as I walked through the automatic doors Tuesday morning, the conversation seemed to quiet, heads turning in my direction with undisguised curiosity. Jesse was at the free weights, his muscled back flexing as he worked through a set of rows. For a moment, seeing him there in his element, I felt a flutter of the excitement that had gotten me into this mess. He was beautiful, confident, alive in a way that made me feel alive too. "Hey," I said, approaching cautiously. "Can we talk?" He finished his set and turned, but the easy smile I'd grown accustomed to was nowhere to be found. "Lysandra, I was wondering when you'd show up. Things have gotten complicated." "Complicated?" He grabbed his towel, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That's one way to put it. Tasha's been blowing up my phone since Sunday. Apparently there's video evidence of our friendship making the rounds." The way he said friendship made my stomach clench. "Jesse, I'm sorry about that. I had no idea anyone was recording." "Recording what exactly? Because according to Tasha, it looks like we were about 2 seconds away from having sex on the dance floor." Heat flooded my cheeks. "That's an exaggeration." "Is it?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Because I remember you being pretty into it Saturday night. I remember you telling me how unhappy you were, how much you needed someone who understood you." The conversation felt like it was spinning out of control. Around us, other gym members were pretending to focus on their workouts while obviously listening to every word. "Can we please talk somewhere private?" Jesse glanced around, then nodded toward the juice bar in the corner. We settled at a small table, and I tried to find the right words to explain the chaos my life had become. "Adrien wants a separation," I said quietly. "Shit." Jesse ran a hand through his dark hair. "Lysandra, I'm sorry. I never meant for things to get this serious." "What do you mean this serious? I thought we had something real. I thought you cared about me." "I do care about you. You're amazing, and you deserve better than how Adrien treats you. But—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "But what?" "But I'm not looking to be the reason someone's marriage ends. I'm not looking to be responsible for breaking up a family." The words hit like ice water. "You're not responsible. This is about problems that already existed in my marriage." "Maybe. But Tasha's threatening to send screenshots of our text messages to Adrien if I don't cut contact with you completely." "Screenshots?" My voice came out higher than intended. "What screenshots?" Jesse's expression grew even more uncomfortable. "The ones where you talked about leaving him. The ones where you said you were falling for me. The ones where we made plans to meet up while he was at work." I stared at him, remembering those late-night conversations, the way it felt to have someone eager to hear from me, someone who made me feel desired and understood. I'd been so caught up in the emotional high that I'd never considered how those messages might look to an outsider. "Jesse, you can't let her do that. Those conversations were private." "Were they? Because it seems like privacy isn't something either of us is very good at protecting." He stood up, shouldering his gym bag. "Look, Lysandra, I think we need to cool things off for a while. Let the dust settle." "Cool things off?" I stood too, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Is that what this is to you? Something to cool off from?" "Keep your voice down." Jesse glanced around nervously. "People are staring. Let them stare. I'm tired of everyone acting like I'm some kind of criminal for wanting to feel alive again." "You're married, Lysandra. You have a kid. This was always going to be complicated." "So what? You're just going to abandon me when I need support the most." "I'm trying to do the right thing here." The right thing would have been not pursuing a married woman in the first place. The words came out louder than I'd intended, carrying across the gym and drawing open stares from other members. Jesse's face flushed red. "I pursued you. You're the one who started texting me after hours. You're the one who complained about your marriage every chance you got. You're the one who said you needed someone who appreciated you." "Because I do need that. Because my husband treats me like furniture, and you made me feel special." And now your husband is leaving you, and somehow that's my fault. The question hung between us like a challenge. Around us, the gym had gone completely quiet, our personal drama becoming public entertainment. Forget it, I said, grabbing my water bottle. Forget all of it. I stormed out of the gym, my face burning with humiliation. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and tried to calm down, but my hands were shaking with rage and embarrassment. My phone rang. Sabine. How did it go with Jesse? Terrible. He's cutting me off. Apparently, Tasha has screenshots of our text messages and is threatening to send them to Adrien. What kind of screenshots? I closed my eyes, remembering the late-night conversations that had felt so intimate and safe at the time. The kind that make it clear this wasn't just friendship. Sabine was quiet for a moment. Lys, how far did this thing with Jesse actually go? It was emotional. We connected on a level that Adrien and I haven't in years. We understood each other. That's not what I asked. Nothing physical happened. Not really. Just dancing, some flirting, some conversations that maybe got a little too personal. A little too personal? I may have told him I was falling for him. I may have said I was thinking about leaving Adrien, but those were just feelings, Sab, just words. Words that are about to become evidence in a divorce proceeding. The reality of the situation hit me like a truck. If Tasha shared those messages, if Adrien's lawyer got hold of them, they wouldn't see a lonely wife seeking emotional connection. They'd see a woman who'd been planning to leave her marriage, who'd been emotionally unfaithful, who'd been actively pursuing another man. I need to get ahead of this, I said. I need to control the narrative before it gets completely out of hand. How? I don't know yet, but I can't let Jesse and Tasha destroy my life because they're scared of a little gossip. That afternoon, I drove to the coffee shop where Sabine and I usually met, hoping to strategize. But when I walked in, I found her sitting across from someone I hadn't expected. Miriam. Lysandra, Miriam said coolly as I approached their table. Sit down. We need to talk. What's going on? I looked between my sister and my mother-in-law, trying to read the dynamic. Miriam called me, Sabine said quietly. She wanted to hear my perspective on what's been happening. My perspective? I sat down slowly. What did you tell her? The truth, Miriam answered before Sabine could respond. That you've been having an emotional affair for months. That you've been planning to leave your husband. That you've been using your sister as a sounding board for your complaints about my son while you pursued another man. I stared at Sabine, feeling betrayed. You told her about our private conversations. She already knew, Lys. Adrien showed her the text messages, all of them, including the ones you sent to me. The blood drained from my face. What text messages? Miriam pulled out her phone and began reading in a calm, steady voice. Sabine, I think I'm falling in love with Jesse. He makes me feel things Adrien never has. I know it's complicated, but I can't keep pretending to be happy in a dead marriage just to keep up appearances. That was taken out of context. I've been thinking about what you said about deserving better. Maybe it's time to stop settling for a man who doesn't appreciate me. Maybe it's time to choose happiness over security. Each word felt like a nail in my coffin. I remembered sending those messages, remembered the relief of finally admitting my feelings to someone who I thought would understand. If Adrien can't see what he's losing, maybe I should stop trying to make him see it. Maybe I should just let him lose it. Stop, I whispered. There are 37 messages like this, Lysandra. 37 messages documenting your decision to emotionally check out of your marriage and pursue another man. 37 pieces of evidence that you were planning to leave long before Saturday night. I looked at Sabine, hoping for support, for understanding, for some sign that she still believed in me, but her expression was pained, conflicted. Lys, she said softly, some of the things you wrote, they weren't just venting, they were plans. They were feelings, confused, complicated feelings that I was trying to work through. By pursuing another man, Miriam said, by complaining about your husband to anyone who would listen while you built an emotional relationship with someone else. I was unhappy. I was lonely. I was trying to figure out how to save my marriage. By planning to leave it, the question hung in the air, unanswerable. Because the truth was, somewhere in those late-night conversations with Jesse, in those text messages to Sabine, in those moments of feeling understood and desired, I had been planning to leave. Maybe not consciously, maybe not with clear intent, but I'd been building an exit strategy disguised as emotional exploration. Adrien's not the man I married, I said finally. He's distant, cold, more interested in his work than his family. I felt invisible. So you made yourself visible to another man. I made myself happy. For the first time in years, I felt appreciated and valued, and alive. Miriam leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. And now you're about to lose everything. Your husband, your home, possibly your daughter. Was it worth it, Lysandra? Was feeling appreciated worth destroying your family? As I sat there, surrounded by evidence of my own words, my own choices, my own gradual betrayal of the life I'd built, I realized I didn't have an answer to that question. And that, more than anything else, told me just how far I'd fallen. Friday morning brought the kind of rain that seemed designed to match my mood, relentless, grey, and thoroughly depressing. I'd spent the week in a strange limbo, suspended from work, avoided by most of my friends, and living in a house that felt more like a crime scene than a home. Adrien had been sleeping in the guest room since Monday, communicating with me only about Isa's schedule and practical matters. He was polite, distant, and completely unreachable. It was like living with a stranger who happened to know where we kept the coffee filters. The call came at 9:15, just as I was trying to work up the energy to shower and pretend I had somewhere important to be. Lysandra, it's Patricia from HR. I need you to come in this morning. We have some things to discuss. My stomach dropped. I thought I was taking personal time. Your personal time has become a company issue. Please be here by 11. The drive to the office felt like a march to the gallows. I'd worked at Henderson & Associates for 6 years, building relationships, establishing credibility, creating a professional identity that felt separate from my roles as wife and mother. Now that identity was apparently as fragile as everything else in my life. Patricia's office felt different this time, less welcoming, more formal. She wasn't alone. David Chen, the company's legal counsel, sat beside her desk with a manila folder and an expression that suggested I was about to receive very bad news. Lysandra, thank you for coming in. Please sit down. Patricia gestured to the chair across from her desk. I'm afraid we have a situation that requires immediate attention. What kind of situation? David opened his folder and pulled out several printed pages. We've received a formal complaint from 3 employees alleging that your recent behavior has created a hostile work environment. Hostile work environment? I haven't even been here this week. The complaint alleges that your personal conduct, as documented in widely circulated social media posts and videos, has made these employees uncomfortable working under your supervision. They claim it demonstrates poor judgment and unprofessional behavior that undermines your authority as an HR manager. I stared at the papers in his hands. They're complaining about my personal life. They're complaining about behavior that reflects on this company and affects their ability to respect your professional judgment, Patricia corrected. When an HR manager's personal conduct becomes the subject of office gossip and social media ridicule, it creates problems we can't ignore. This is discrimination. You can't fire someone for their private life. We're not firing you for your private life, David said carefully. We're terminating your employment for conduct that demonstrates poor judgment and damages your ability to effectively perform your duties. The words hit like a physical blow. Termination, not suspension, not personal leave, not a chance to rehabilitate my reputation. They were cutting me loose completely. You can't be serious. I'm afraid we are. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks' severance pay, and will provide a neutral reference for future employment opportunities. But effective immediately, your employment with Henderson and Associates is terminated. I felt like I was drowning. Patricia, please. I've been a good employee for 6 years. One mistake shouldn't destroy my entire career. Lysandra, this isn't about one mistake. This is about a pattern of behavior that's become public knowledge and affects your ability to do your job. I'm sorry, but the decision is final. The security guard who escorted me to my desk to collect my personal belongings was kind but firm. My coworkers watched from their cubicles as I packed family photos, personal coffee mugs, and the small decorations that had made this space feel like mine. 6 years of professional life reduced to a cardboard box and a walk of shame to the parking garage. In my car, I called Sabine. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cautious. "Lise, how did it go?" "They fired me." The words came out flat, emotionless. "Hostile work environment, poor judgment, effective immediately." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." "Are you? Because it seems like everyone's pretty quick to abandon me when things get difficult." "That's not fair. I've been trying to support you, but you have to understand that some of the choices you've made have consequences." "Choices I've made? What about the choice to be a loyal sister? What about the choice to keep private conversations private?" Sabine was quiet for a moment. "Lysandra, I never shared anything with Miriam. Adrien found those text messages on your phone. I didn't betray you." "But you didn't defend me either." "How could I defend the indefensible? You were having an emotional affair. You were planning to leave your husband. You were putting your daughter through this chaos for what? For a guy who won't even take your calls anymore." The accusation stung because it was true. Jesse had blocked my number after our confrontation at the gym. His social media accounts had gone private. He'd made it clear that whatever we'd had was over, leaving me to face the consequences alone. I was trying to save my marriage by figuring out what was missing, by finding it with someone else, by understanding what I needed to be happy. And are you happy, Lise? Right now, in this moment, are you happy with how things turned out? I hung up without answering because the truth was too painful to speak out loud. I wasn't happy. I was unemployed, facing divorce, estranged from my family, and completely alone. The man I'd thought I was falling for had disappeared at the first sign of real consequences, and the husband I'd taken for granted was methodically dismantling our life together. That afternoon, I picked Isa up from school and tried to pretend everything was normal. But children have a way of seeing through adult pretenses, and my 7-year-old daughter was no exception. "Mummy, why is Daddy sleeping in the other room?" "Daddy's just having trouble sleeping lately, sweetheart. Sometimes adults need different sleeping arrangements." "Is it because you were dancing with Uncle Jesse?" My blood ran cold. "What do you know about that?" Madison's mommy showed her a video on her phone. Madison said you and Uncle Jesse were kissing, but that looked like dancing to me. The idea of other children, other parents, discussing my behavior in front of my daughter made me feel physically sick. Isa was being exposed to adult drama she couldn't understand, becoming collateral damage in a situation that was spiraling beyond my control. "Sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Sometimes they do things that hurt other people's feelings without meaning to." "Did you hurt Daddy's feelings?" The simple question cut deeper than any accusation from adults. "Yes, baby, I think I did." "Are you going to say sorry?" "I'm trying to, but sometimes saying sorry isn't enough to fix things." That evening, after Isa was in bed, I found Adrien in his home office, surrounded by papers and files. He looked up when I knocked on the doorframe, his expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "About this separation, about our daughter, about finding a way to work through this without destroying everything we've built." Adrien leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark eyes that had once looked at me with love and now held only weary resignation. "What exactly do you want to work through, Lysandra?" Our marriage, our problems, the issues that led to the situation in the first place. You mean the issues that led to you having an emotional affair and planning to leave me? I wasn't planning to leave you. I was confused, unhappy, looking for something that was missing. And you found it with Jessie. I thought I did. I was wrong. Were you, or are you just saying that because Jessie won't return your calls, and you're facing the consequences of your choices? The question hung between us like a challenge. I wanted to deny it, to insist that my regret was genuine, that my desire to save our marriage was real. But sitting there in his office, surrounded by evidence of the methodical way he was dismantling our life together, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I lost my job today, I said quietly. I know. Patricia called me. You know? Why would she call you? Because I'm listed as your emergency contact, because despite everything that's happened, I still care about what happens to you. The kindness in his voice was somehow worse than anger would have been. It reminded me of the man I'd married, the man who'd loved me unconditionally, the man I'd systematically taken for granted until it was too late. Adrien, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it, for the lies, for the emotional affair, for putting our family through this. If I could take it back, I would. Would you? Or would you just be more careful about getting caught? That's not fair. Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're only sorry because things didn't work out the way you planned. You're sorry because Jessie abandoned you and your job is gone and your reputation is in ruins. But are you sorry for betraying our marriage? Are you sorry for putting another man before your husband and daughter? I wanted to say yes, to convince him that my remorse was real and complete, but the truth was more complicated. I was sorry for the pain I'd caused, sorry for the chaos I'd created, sorry for the consequences I was facing. But was I sorry for feeling alive and desired and appreciated? Was I sorry for those moments of connection and excitement that had made me feel like myself again? I don't know, I admitted quietly. At least you're honest. Adrien turned back to his computer. The separation papers are on the kitchen counter. You have 30 days to review them with a lawyer and respond. After that, we move forward with divorce proceedings. Divorce? The word came out as a whisper. What did you think this was, Lysandra? A temporary separation, while you figured out whether you wanted to be married or not. A trial run to see if Jessie would take you seriously. I thought it was a wake-up call. I thought you were trying to scare me into appreciating what we have. What we have is broken. What we have is a marriage where one person checked out months ago and the other person was too blind to see it. What we have is a daughter who deserves better than parents who can't trust each other. As I walked back to the living room, I realized that my threat to leave, my manipulative attempt to make him chase me, had become the most honest thing I'd said in months, because somewhere in the process of pursuing Jessie, of complaining about my marriage, of planning my emotional escape, I had already left. I just hadn't had the courage to admit it until Adrien opened the door and invited me to make it official. The law offices of Morrison, Blake and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a gleaming downtown tower, all marble and mahogany, and the kind of understated elegance that screamed expensive. I sat in the waiting area, clutching my purse and trying to project confidence I didn't feel, while my lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca Torres, who'd come highly recommended and cost more than I could afford, reviewed documents on her tablet. Remember, Rebecca said quietly, don't volunteer information. Answer questions directly and honestly, but don't elaborate unless asked. And whatever you do, don't get emotional. That's exactly what they're expecting. Through the glass conference room doors, I could see Adrien sitting beside his attorney, a distinguished man in his 60s who radiated the kind of calm competence that came with decades of successful practice. Adrien looked composed, professional, like a man who'd done his homework and was prepared for whatever came next. Mrs. Price, a young paralegal appeared at my elbow. They're ready for you. The conference room was designed to intimidate. floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20, leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly salary when I'd had one. Adrien's lawyer, Thomas Morrison, gestured for us to sit across from them. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is difficult for everyone involved, but I believe we can reach an amicable resolution if we approach this professionally." Morrison opened a thick file folder. "Mr. Price has prepared a comprehensive settlement offer that we believe is fair and reasonable." Rebecca leaned forward. "We'll need to review any offer carefully before responding." "Of course, but I think you'll find the terms generous considering the circumstances." Morrison pulled out a document and slid it across the table. "Joint legal custody of Isabella, with primary physical custody to Mr. Price. Mrs. Price would have supervised visitation every other weekend and Wednesday evenings." "Supervised visitation?" I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. "Why would visitation need to be supervised?" Morrison exchanged a glance with Adrien before responding. "Given the recent evidence of poor judgment and unstable behavior, my client feels it's in the child's best interest to ensure appropriate supervision during visits." "What evidence? What unstable behavior?" Morrison opened another folder and began laying out photographs like playing cards. Security camera footage from the club, screenshots of text messages, social media posts, even photos of me leaving the gym after my confrontation with Jesse. Evidence that suggests a pattern of reckless behavior, poor decision-making, and prioritizing personal gratification over family responsibilities. Rebecca picked up one of the screenshots, a text conversation between Jesse and me from 3 weeks ago. "Where did you obtain these private communications?" "From Mrs. Price's phone, which Mr. Price had legal access to as her husband and as the account holder for their shared mobile plan." I stared at the evidence spread across the table, months of private conversations, intimate photos Jesse had sent me, location data showing when I'd been at his apartment while claiming to be at work events. It was a complete timeline of my emotional affair, documented with the kind of thoroughness that suggested Adrien had been building this case for weeks. "You went through my phone," I said, looking directly at Adrien for the first time since entering the room. "I found it unlocked on the kitchen counter," he replied calmly. "When I saw the messages from Jesse, I realized I needed to understand the scope of what was happening in our marriage. So you violated my privacy. I protected my interests and my daughter's welfare." Morrison continued laying out documents, bank records showing unexplained expenditures on clothing and personal items, credit card receipts from restaurants and hotels during times when Mrs. Price claimed to be working late, cell phone records documenting hundreds of calls and texts to Mr. Hahn during work hours. Each piece of evidence felt like a nail in my coffin. I'd been so careful to keep my relationship with Jesse emotional rather than physical, but the paper trail told a different story, one of deception, lies, and systematic betrayal of my marriage vows. "This is character assassination," Rebecca said. "My client made some poor choices, but nothing documented here suggests she's unfit to parent her daughter." "Doesn't it?" Morrison pulled out another document. "This is a statement from Isabella's teacher, expressing concern about the child's emotional state and academic performance over the past month. Multiple instances of anxiety, difficulty concentrating, and questions about why her parents are fighting." My heart clenched. Issa's having problems at school. Problems that began when her mother's behavior became the subject of public gossip and social media ridicule, Morrison continued. Problems that escalated when other children began asking her about videos of her mother with another man. "That's not my fault. I can't control what other people post online. But you can control your behavior in public. You can control whether you put yourself in situations that compromise your family's reputation and your daughter's emotional well-being." Rebecca tried to regain control of the conversation. "Mr. Morrison, while my client acknowledges that mistakes were made, the custody arrangement you're proposing is punitive and excessive. There's no evidence of actual harm to the child." Isn't there? Morrison pulled out one final document. This is a recording of a phone conversation between Mrs. Price and her sister, made last Tuesday evening. He pressed play on a small digital recorder, and my own voice filled the room. I don't know why everyone's acting like I committed murder. So what if I fell for someone else? So what if I was planning to leave? At least I was honest about being unhappy instead of pretending everything was fine. The words hung in the air like an indictment. I remembered that conversation, remembered feeling frustrated and defensive, but hearing it played back in this sterile conference room made me sound callous and unrepentant. That conversation was private, I protested. That conversation was recorded by your sister and provided to my client because she was concerned about your state of mind and its potential impact on her niece. I stared across the table at Adrien, trying to process the betrayal. Sabine recorded me. Sabine loves Issa, Adrien said quietly. She's worried about what this is doing to her. The room felt like it was spinning. My sister, my closest ally, had been gathering evidence against me. The people I'd trusted most had been building a case to take my daughter away. I want to speak to my client privately, Rebecca said. Morrison nodded. Take all the time you need. We'll be right outside. When the room cleared except for Rebecca and me, I felt the weight of my situation settle over me like a burial shroud. How bad is this? I asked. Bad. They have documentation of an extensive emotional affair, evidence of deception and lies, proof that your behavior has affected your daughter's well-being, and recordings that make you sound unrepentant and self-centered. But I am repentant. I'm sorry for what I've done. Are you? Because that recording suggests otherwise. It suggests you're sorry you got caught, not sorry for your actions. I closed my eyes, trying to think clearly. What are my options? You can fight this and probably lose, spending thousands of dollars you don't have and putting your daughter through a bitter custody battle. Or you can accept their terms and try to rebuild your relationship with Issa gradually. Supervised visitation, like I'm some kind of danger to my own daughter. It's temporary. The agreement includes provisions for reviewing the custody arrangement after 6 months, assuming you can demonstrate stability and appropriate behavior. Stability, what does that mean? Employment, appropriate housing. No romantic relationships that could be seen as detrimental to Issa's well-being. Counseling to address the issues that led to this situation. I thought about my empty apartment. I'd moved out of the family home the week before. My non-existent job prospects. My destroyed reputation. Stability felt like an impossible goal. And if I don't sign? Then we go to trial, where all of this evidence becomes public record, where Issa might be called to testify about the impact of your behavior on her emotional state, where you'll be painted as an unfit mother who prioritized her own gratification over her child's welfare. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. I could sign the papers and accept supervised visitation, or I could fight and risk losing Issa completely. When Morrison and Adrien returned, I was ready with my answer. I'll sign, I said quietly. Morrison placed the documents in front of me, and I picked up the pen with shaking hands. Each signature felt like giving up a piece of my life, acknowledging that the choices I'd made had led inevitably to this moment. There's one more thing, Morrison said as I finished signing. Mr. Price has prepared a statement he'd like to read. Adrien cleared his throat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. When he spoke, his voice was steady but filled with emotion. Lysandra, 7 years ago, I promised to love, honor, and cherish you for better or worse. I kept that promise even when you stopped keeping yours. I tried to be the husband you needed, but I realize now that I was trying to love someone who had already left our marriage emotionally. I wanted to interrupt, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this to protect our daughter and to protect myself from further betrayal. You said maybe you should leave, and I opened the door because I finally understood that you'd already gone. This just makes it official. He folded the paper and looked directly at me. I hope someday you'll understand that love isn't about feeling appreciated or desired or alive. It's about commitment, sacrifice, and putting your family before your own wants. I hope you'll learn that before it's too late to have a real relationship with Issa. As I sat there with the signed papers in front of me, I realized that my threat to leave, my manipulative attempt to make him chase me, to remind him of what he'd lose, had become the truest thing I'd ever said. Because in pursuing Jessie, in complaining about my marriage, in prioritizing my own emotional needs over my family's welfare, I had already left. Adrien had simply been honest enough to open the door and let me go. The elevator ride to the ground floor felt eternal. Rebecca tried to offer reassurance about rebuilding my relationship with Issa, about the possibility of modifying the custody agreement in the future, about moving forward with dignity. But her words felt hollow against the weight of what I'd lost. On the street outside the law offices, I stood in the afternoon sun and tried to figure out where to go next. My apartment was empty and depressing. My job was gone. My friends had distanced themselves from the scandal. My family was fractured, divided between loyalty to me and concern for Issa. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, looking for someone to call, someone who might offer comfort or understanding, or just a friendly voice. But every name reminded me of bridges I'd burned, relationships I'd damaged, trust I'd broken. Finally, I called a taxi and gave the driver my address. As the city blurred past the windows, I thought about Adrien's words. You said maybe you should leave, and I opened the door because I finally understood that you'd already gone. He was right. I had already left, piece by piece, choice by choice, lie by lie. I'd left when I started confiding in Jessie instead of working on my marriage. I'd left when I began planning my emotional escape, rather than fighting for what we'd built together. I'd left when I chose feeling desired over being trustworthy, excitement over stability, my own gratification over my family's welfare. The threat to leave had been my last manipulation, my final attempt to control a situation that was already beyond my control. But Adrien had called my bluff in the most devastating way possible, not by begging me to stay, but by having the strength to let me go. As the taxi pulled up to my apartment building, I realized that I was exactly where I'd said I wanted to be. Free from a marriage that felt constraining, free from a husband who didn't appreciate me enough, free from the responsibilities that had weighed me down. I was also completely alone.